Hello, my name is David Price and I'm delighted to be talking to you today about a question that's vitally important to all of us. How can technology help make us healthier and happier? As someone who very nearly died a few months ago, this, as you can imagine, is a subject very close to my heart. Each of the 5 themes in this webinar have played a critical role in a range of health issues I've experienced over the past 5 years. Without the use of some highly sophisticated IT systems on the intensive care ward, I very much doubt that I'd be here talking to you today. Although I've advised a number of healthcare agencies, I'm definitely not a technical expert when it comes to IT. People call me a learning futurist, whatever that is, and my book, Open: How We'll Work, Live and Learn in the Future, raised a number of challenges about the way knowledge now spreads. The revolution we're seeing in knowledge and social learning is particularly relevant to the focus of this webinar, so I'll talk about it later. First though, let's take a quick look at some of the enormous challenges and opportunities facing the healthcare industry. Everyone knows that we're now living longer. Life expectancy in the UK has gone up from 76 in 1990 to the current estimate of 81, and that figure is going to rise even further. We can all expect to live till the age of 90 by the year 2030. This is both a testimony and a trial for our healthcare systems. We're on the cusp of phenomenal improvements in genomics and personalised cancer treatments. But of course, an ageing population will cost a lot more. So UK NHS spending will be £133 billion by 2020. And while our spending as a proportion of GDP is far from being the highest in Europe and nowhere near the spend we see in the US, the pressure upon costs and value will continue to ratchet up. The need to keep a lid on costs perhaps explains why the UK is seeing a greater rise in the investment in IT compared to other European countries, because the potential for the smart use of big data to inform budgeting has now grabbed everybody's interest. But controlling the costs of greater life expectancy is just one of our current challenges. Another, which could be exacerbated by the recent Brexit decision, is matching the supply of skilled professionals to the increased demand. If you've spent any time at all in a hospital, it'll be all too obvious to you that currently we can't keep pace with that demand. Now, normally when I talk about the future of the workplace, people often feel threatened by the risk of losing their jobs to robots or artificially intelligent systems. But in this case, the rapid advancement in robotics is helping us cope with labour shortages. We're already seeing autonomous robots carrying out all kinds of jobs in hospitals, from deliveries to reception. And the combination of telemedicine and robotics is making quality healthcare accessible to millions of people in remote communities who previously would have been deprived of essential care. This will transform lifespans in some of the poorest places in the world and have a significant effect on costs too. So these are hugely exciting times for the concept of complementarity, the way that technological breakthroughs can combine with each other to accelerate change. Telstra, telecommunications giant in Australia, last week announced their involvement in haptically enhanced robotics. Essentially, this means that ultrasound scans can be carried out remotely, providing the technician with stereo vision and the necessary sense of feel, and all of this happening on a standard 4G platform. The entrance of mega corporations like Telstra, Google, with their growing platform of DeepMind clinical apps, and Apple, most notably through wearable technologies, will be a significant feature as we go forward. However, when it comes to analytics and making sense of the vast amounts of big data now being generated, Intel is leading the field, and it's the impact of big data that we turn to next. The average hospital currently generates hundreds of terabytes of data annually, but this is just the tip of the iceberg when we project forward. The breakthroughs we're now seeing in genomics, bioinformatics, the Internet of Things, where by 2025 we will have 25 billion devices hooked up to the net and thus generating data. This all means that pretty soon we'll see colossal amounts of data being generated. This presents a real challenge for companies like Intel. The power of big data lies in making connections between complex but differing sets of information. So that's why integration and analysis of data is going to be an absolute priority for Intel and others. But healthcare can't just be about data. At its heart, it's about relationships, and the implications for personalised healthcare that big data affords is already transforming the patient-general practitioner relationship. And combined with mobile technologies, it should radically alter the process of diagnosis and personalised treatment. Having access to the right data at the optimum time and place and in ways that include the patient in guiding treatment decisions will be paramount. So it comes as no surprise to see that end-user spend projections are forecasting that tablets, infrastructure and software will make up the largest spending increase over the next 5 years. Gaining new insights through data analysis is a genuinely exciting development, but we also need to remember that personal interactions are the lifeblood of dignified care. As a patient myself, I've occasionally had to remind consultants, nurses and GPs that they need to look at my face and listen to my voice as well as examine my data. The possibilities that e-health affords are limitless, but if we're to take patients and professionals with us, we will need imagination, creativity, humility, and above all, an overriding concern for security and sensitivity in how we develop and apply future knowledge. And as we'll see, the opening of knowledge means that it isn't just the professionals who will be able to access this data. One trend that is still somewhat under the radar is the rise in what I call people-powered innovation, and specifically people-powered healthcare. One inevitable reality resulting from the opening up of knowledge that we've seen recently, and remember that we've only had social media for about 10 years, is people's desire to have more control over their lives, including their healthcare. And some are doing this at a very sophisticated level. For example, a few months ago, I visited an IT consultant who was treating his wife, who had stage 4 cancer, with his own homemade chemotherapy combination. He was doing it, he said, because conventional medicine had told him there was nothing more that could be done for her. Through online forums, he was able to pick the brains of chemists, researchers, physicians, and importantly, other patients. He ended up using repurposed and unapproved chemotherapy compounds. And whatever concerns we might have about the safety of that, it seems to be working. His wife's doing so well that he's now able to help and advise others. These DIY innovators might be forced to operate in the shadows, but their numbers are growing. Here's another example. Tim Omer is a British IT consultant who's got stage 1 diabetes. He couldn't understand why continuous glucose monitors were so expensive and why they couldn't upload data to the cloud. So he bought a second-hand monitor on eBay, repurposed it with some mobile phone software that he'd written, housed it in a Tic Tac box, and then made the source code available for anyone to copy. Thousands of parents have taken his designs and built their own CGMs, so that now they can remotely monitor their own child's diabetes. And in the US, John Kostick has done something similar. He tweeted how to jailbreak a continuous glucose monitor so that he could get readings from it anywhere and at any time. A few days later, over 8,000 people had now hijacked their continuous glucose monitors. And that's just one condition where thousands of non-professionals have outdone the industry in finding personalised solutions. And the health forums are full of these kinds of people. They're known as pro-ams, amateurs but with a professional level of knowledge. And they're sharing that knowledge and expertise because they're frustrated with the clinical trials process or priced out of conventional treatments. And this is just the start. Imagine the possibilities when genome sequencing will cost $10 and drugs can be 3D printed at home. Yes, there are safety concerns with DIY health hacks, but an e-health industry has to work with these people, not prosecute them. Look what happened when the record companies thought they could scare people off piracy by prosecuting 13-year-old kids for illegally downloading music. We have to tap into the growing body of knowledge that's out there among non-professionals. Not least because the next big treatment breakthroughs are just as likely to come from chemistry graduates working out of garages as they are from big pharmaceutical companies. Most of this webinar series is dealing with what we might call data-driven healthcare. Whether it's Google's symptom search or a patient's genetic profile, making sense of very large, complex data sets is becoming a priority. Now, this is complicated territory because using big data highlights the tension between security, intellectual property, and openness. And here we have a paradox. The value hidden in data very often only becomes apparent when it's made open, but patients need confidentiality. Or perhaps I should say anonymity, because as Intel's own research shows, people are generally willing to share their anonymized data if they think it will help others. This is a pattern I identified in my book, Open. We're becoming more relaxed about sharing our personal data, providing it can't be used to harm us. A good example of this is the Patients Like Me website, where thousands of patients share their symptoms, drug regimes and outcomes to provide others, including researchers, with valuable data sets. Of course, if we're to make this transition to big open data, then establishing secure platforms becomes critical. But assuming that's in place, the shift towards opening data is becoming inevitable. And I'd like to share two great examples. Helen Bevans, Director of Transformation at the NHS, and she instigated a thing called the NHS Change Day. She invited anyone who worked in or had been treated by the NHS to make pledges or suggest improvements. Over 800,000 ideas were put online in a single day. 800,000. When I asked Helen what used to exist before Change Day, she said, well, we used to have a suggestions box. And in India, the open source drug discovery platform is radically shortening the development cycle for new drug treatments and making new drug development an inclusive process. Currently, it's got 8,000 participants from 130 countries who collaborate without the constraints of intellectual property. The enormous benefits that data-driven healthcare brings depends, like the Human Genome Project itself, upon the principles of open source to really accelerate treatments and quality improvement. Now, I said earlier that I'd had cause to be grateful to the NHS last year, and I want to close by sharing my story, because it brings some colour to otherwise grey technical issues like data management and systems architecture. In September of last year, I had surgery for cancer of the colon. It should have been a straightforward operation, but in reconnecting the colon, I suffered an anastomotic leak, which in turn led to severe septic shock. My blood pressure dropped to 60/30, my lungs stopped working, and my kidneys were on the point of needing dialysis. Now, the death rate for severe septic shock is about 50%, so it was a toss of the coin whether I'd make it through. My wife was told to gather the family, which is never something you want to hear. And for the next 7 days, although I don't recall the first 3 days of them, I was placed in intensive care. And when I wasn't off my face on morphine, I noticed that all my observations were being monitored every 15 minutes. And it was during this time that the penny dropped. Intensive critical care like mine is all about the numbers. Getting the balance just right between antibiotics and other fluids, checking the blood for flow and bacteria levels, and ensuring oxygen levels are adequate. All of this requires accurate, fast, up-to-the-minute data. Guesswork and intuition won't do it. My consultants, who all carried tablets where they used to carry clipboards, had to be able to access these observations wherever they were in the hospital. That information needed to be reliable and available from anywhere, especially because the surgeon who operated upon me was on holiday with his family when news of my sepsis reached him. Every 15 minutes, the numbers were checked and rechecked, and the treatment was adjusted accordingly. Gradually, they got the toxins out of my body, and as you can see, I made a complete recovery, and I have my life back again. My cancer's gone, and I've almost the same lifestyle as I had before. And I used to think that I owed my survival to the doctors and nurses who got me through that crisis. But I now realise that I owe a debt of gratitude to so many more. To the people that designed and built the monitoring equipment, to the software developers who wrote the operating code, to the technicians who enabled my data to be uploaded to the cloud, and even to the people who distributed the monitors and advised on their use. All those people who make data available and data access possible may be far removed from the hospital wards and clinics, but they're saving lives just as much as the medics. And for that, I'm truly grateful. To find out more about how Intel can help you to provide personal healthcare solutions, please sign up to the other videos within the Ingram Intel Healthcare Plus campaign. Actionable big data analytics in healthcare, enabling mobility and collaboration for healthcare, Intel Healthcare making it personal, Intel Breach Security Solution for healthcare. Thank you.